Hi friends, Caitlin here with Sass and Stitch Crochet, and today I'll be walking you through a tutorial for an invisible join seam between two crochet motifs. As you can see, there is no seam line visible from the front side of your work, and you can use this method to cleanly join two pieces of crochet together. Now I'm going to be displaying this method as I assemble my alphabet blanket here. However, this method will work on any kind of crochet piece that you're trying to sew together. It can be hexagons, granny squares, even a sweater, really any piece of crochet. Now, I've already sewn a couple of the lines together, and I'm going to work on showing you how I seam the next row together. And for this method, you have to have the right sides, meaning the top facing sides of your work together. So I'm going to flip these letters upside down and so that the right sides are facing each other. So go ahead and do that with your work. Determine which sides you want to be the front sides and put the front sides together so that the wrong sides are facing you. Then once we've sewn that line all the way across and you open up your work, you'll see that you've sewed everything together in the right orientation. So it might be a little confusing when you're trying to set up for the sewing, but once you open it, it may all make sense. Then I'll go ahead and do the next line. So I'll open up my work and then I'll flip the next row towards me upside down. So that'll give you an idea of what we're about to do here. Okay, so I've got the next set of squares I'm working on, and I know with the N and the O it's hard to tell, but I'm looking at my work upside down. I particularly chose letters to show you that are the same upside down and right side up, but I'm looking at my work upside down, and I'm going to bring over my next letter that's in the row below. So those are going to be seamed together, and I'm going to flip it upside down with the right sides facing each other. So that the wrong sides are on the outsides. Go ahead and grab the yarn that you want to work with for seaming. Now for me, since I have all different colors across my row, I'm just going to go neutral and do it with white. You're not really going to see the seam lines, but you'll be able to see it from the underside, and you might see it if the work stretches a little bit. So you might choose to pick a color of one of the squares that you're seaming together. Like I could pick the orange here and it would at least match one of them. But again, I'm just going to keep it neutral for my whole row. And you want to have a length that is twice the length of the square that you're about to sew. That's how much you'll need for seaming. So go ahead and measure out how long your square is or your piece is, and then double that length. Now, for the sake of my seaming, I'm going to do a longer strand because I'm going to continue sewing after this video is done filming. Once you're ready to begin, you can attach one side of the strand to your yarn needle. I just loop it through and tie a little single knot to keep it still. Now, if you're left-handed, you might opt to work from the left across to the right, but I am right-handed, so I'm going to work from right to left. Now, just real quick, because the corners can be a little finicky, I'm going to actually just pick a spot in the middle to show you what the method looks like at first, so you really get a good understanding, and then we'll start at the very corner. The corners can just be a little bit tricky. So you see how each stitch has 2 loops. When we're doing this method, you're only going to be picking up the outside loop of both of your squares. You don't want to insert your yarn needle through the entire stitch both ways, because if you do that, the seam line is going to show from the front side when you open it up. Instead of that, we're going to pick up just the outside loop of the first square and just the outside loop of the second square. You're going to leave both of those inside loops alone. And it's really as simple as that. You'll just pull your yarn through and then you'll move on to the next set of stitches and pick up just the outside loop of the blue and just the outside loop of the orange and pull through. So that's what the method looks like in general. Now let's go over to the corner and I'll show you how to start officially. I just wanted to show you that real quick because the corners can just be a little bit weird. So I'm going to try my best to find the outside loop of my corner here. Okay, grabbing a corner, grabbing the outside strand from the corner of the orange and outside strand from the blue, and pulling my strand through. Don't pull it all the way through. Leave enough of a tail so that you can weave that end in later. Probably like 6 inches will be enough. And I like to just go ahead and tie a little single knot at the end so I don't accidentally pull my yarn out. And I'll go back and weave that in later when I'm all done. Okay, so now we can move on to the next set of stitches. And since we're just at the corner right now, it really doesn't matter which direction you start. You can start either way, going from up to down or down to up. But that's where we just went through in the corner. So we're going to locate the next set of stitches, grab the outside loops, and pull your strand all the way through until you get to the knot. Moving on to the next, we're going to go in the other direction this time. From whichever one you just did, go the opposite way. We'll be doing a up and down and up and down and up pattern. So up to down, just going through the outside stitches. Switch directions. So that's the inside loop. I want to pick up the outside loop here, outside of the blue, and pull all the way through. And that's really it. That's what you're going to be doing across the your entire piece, whether it's a square or a hexagon or whatever pieces you're seaming together. You'll do it all the way across until you get to the next stopping point, which for me, that would be the next corner. Do this a few more times just to get a little further into your piece, and then we'll take a pause and we'll open up our squares and see what it's looking like so far. Okay, I'm just finishing up this stitch here. And let's go ahead and take a pause and flip open our squares. And you can see that there's really no hint of a join line. Now, my yarn is a little bit stretchy. It has some nylon in it. So if I pull it apart a little bit, you can see the seam line just a little bit. But overall, it does a really good job at staying invisible. And especially if you're working with something like acrylic or cotton that doesn't have a lot of stretch to it, you shouldn't have any problems with seeing the seam line. So there you have it. I'm going to fold mine back down and keep working the rest of the length of my squares. And I will pause here and I'll meet you back when I get close to my opposite corner. And then I'll show you how I attach my next set of squares and make sure that they are attached sturdily enough at the corners so that they don't stretch too much. Okay, I've made it close to the end of my squares. I think I have one more regular seam left and then I'll have my corner to work through. So I'm just going to do my normal one more time. And then I'm going to work through my corner. Again, the corners can be a little fidgety sometimes. Try your best to get the outside loops, but at the end of the day, it's not a huge deal if you can't quite find where you're supposed to work into. Now I'm going to bring my next set of squares over. My O has already been attached to my blanket. This is the one that's next to the N, as the alphabet goes, N-O. And then I'm going to bring in my next square, which is going to go below the O and next to my S, so S-T are together. And I'm going to be attaching all 4 of these squares together at the corner. So flip down both of these sets of squares. Going to align my corners. And I ended on my first set going this direction. So I'm going to go the opposing direction initially on this next corner. Same thing, locate the corner and find the outside loops, going the opposing direction. I can go back and make this a little bit tighter in a minute. Now you're going to go back into the first set, going the same direction you just went. Go back into the corner of the first set in the same place you went before. Go all the way through. And then go back to your next set of squares and go the opposing direction, so that we've gone through both set of squares in both directions. Once you do this, you can pull your strand nice and tight to close everything up together. You can pull as tight as you want. And then just to get us started, I'm going to insert through the next set of stitches. Let's pause for a minute and open up our work so we can take a look. Now, you might be thinking that this corner looks a little fragile, like it's not going to hold the weight of the blanket or the item together, but remember, you'll be sewing a line down the opposite way later on, and so you're going to reinforce that corner when you meet this junction point again, sewing your vertical line. So if it looks a little unstable, don't be too concerned about it yet. You can go back and reinforce that corner again when you do the sewing line down the opposite way. Now we're just going to keep going as normal. Now, as you may have noticed in the initial clip, I like to sew all of my horizontal lines first, and then when I have everything attached to my blanket, I go back and do all the vertical lines. That's just what makes the most sense to me, getting the most out of one strand of yarn all the way across instead of working around the four sides of each square. You can do it any method you want and it will be the same. I still recommend doing the corners the same way, but this is just my personal preference. I've got my knot at the beginning, and whenever you get to the end of what you're working on, you would tie a similar knot at the very end. And that is just about it for the invisible seaming method. I'm really curious to know what you're going to use this on, so let me know in the comments if you try it out, what kind of item you use this for, and how it ended up working out for you. I made this video specifically for my alphabet blanket pattern, but again, it can be used for really anything. Thanks again for watching this video. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments, if you have any feedback for me, and if you have any other crochet methods, techniques that you'd like me to display, let me know in the comments and I'll see if I can fit it into my schedule. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.